So, yeah, I will start now because I have everybody's attention, and that's great. So, good evening, everybody, even to people joining us via live stream. Today I'm in a dual role. I'm both an organizer of the Berlin R users group, and at the same time, I also have the pleasure to presenting one of the topics that is very dear to me at the moment because I've been working a lot with it in the last couple of months, namely Quarto. But before we dive into Quarto and what you can do with it, I want Rebecca to say a few words.
Well, really just 2 words, 2 sentences, because I work here at Reservix, and I felt we have a good space to host this meetup. At Reservix, we sell tickets for events, concerts, sports events. We mainly use PHP. Here in Berlin, we also use C# and JavaScript, TypeScript, and we also have apps for promoters when they do access control at the stadiums and stuff. So yeah, that's about it. If you have questions, come to me later.
So thanks a lot to Reservix for hosting us and Rebecca for organizing this. Okay, Quarto. So I assume that most of you have not really played around with Quarto yet, or at least, I mean, some of you might have experience with Markdown. So I will start with the basics, and then towards the end, I will show more advanced examples. And throughout the whole presentation, please, at any time, raise your hand, make a noise, interrupt me to ask questions. And for those people who are joining us on the live stream, you can also use the chat, and Rebecca will keep an eye on it and also raise the hand for you. Before we dive into Quarto, just a few words about me. I also like to promote myself a bit. So at the moment, I'm the head of AI at wikifolio.com. That's a Vienna-based social trading platform. But to be honest, I'm not doing a lot of work for them at the moment because I'm in an educational leave. So most of the time I can spend on things that I'm interested in. And at the moment, I work a lot on the Tidy Finance project. That's an open source project where we provide content for lecturers in the area of empirical finance, because this is one of my backgrounds. This year, I also started writing blog posts on this new domain that I think is funny because I like this whole tidy thing. So I bought the tidy intelligence domain. I will show you some examples. I just wanted to have a different outlet that is more general than the finance stuff that I'm doing with the other guys. And last but not least, last year, I don't know why, I realized that dropshipping is a thing, and our Tidy Finance co-authors, they want to have T-shirts, so I started an Etsy store with some designs. I don't know, but not very serious. In any case, let's talk about Quarto now. So, what is Quarto? It is, in one sentence, very technical one actually. It's an open source scientific and technical publishing system. I mean, what does it mean? On the one hand, you have a couple of different programming languages. You see here, it's already illustrated. It can be R, Python, Observable, Julia. Then Quarto happens, and as an output, you get different document formats ranging from HTML, PDF, and Word. This is a great illustration by Alison Horst. So they used it to present Quarto to the world in 2022. But in this presentation, we will talk much more about what's happening here because this is very vague. But before we go into the details, I think it's a really great thing that you can use to really combine a story that you're telling or that you want to tell in the form of a presentation, for instance. So this is built with Quarto. in the form of some reports that you have to deliver, or a scheduled report while you're building a website, or hosting your own blog, like many things that you can do. And the great thing is you can combine it with code. So if you're creating a report, maybe you just want to include a couple of figures for the business people, but maybe you have a team of data scientists who also want to see the code behind these figures. So you can really include both things flexibly with Quarto. And it is available for, I think, the most important authoring tools for data scientists. Of course, RStudio, because the people behind RStudio, they are also behind Quarto. But I think they made a very smart move to not only focus on RStudio, but also support Jupyter notebooks and VS Code. And actually, I've never, maybe you have NeoBeam experience, I've never used it. But for those three, I've used it, I tried it, it works. I think this is really great, because then you can also work with different programming languages, different environments, and create all sorts of documents. I've mentioned it before, maybe you have some experience with Markdown or R Markdown. It is very similar. So with R code, Markdown, you create a document, but it's much more powerful. Actually, those 3 points I took from their presentation. So this is like the Quarto pitch. And I mean, I support them, but so this is why it's so verbose and so much text. So the first big plus for Quarto is that it is a consistent implementation, as you will see later in these examples, that there are many features. For instance, they have tab sets, code folding, syntax highlighting that you can for many different output formats, and it's just standardized. I think it's very nice because you don't have to tinker that much if you render an HTML or a PDF. It's just the same code. Also, they focus a lot on creating accessible documents. So the standards that they have for coloring, for instance, syntax highlighting focuses on accessibility. And the third point that I really love about it is that it's natively multilingual. So the idea is that you can use many different languages to create Quarto-based documents. But of course, the focus here, I think, aren't Python. I mean, data scientists are really the target group of Quarto. I also played around with Julia. I can show you an example, but it's a bit more painful, as Julia is, unfortunately, at the moment. And observable, again, I don't have any experience here, so please don't ask me in this area. Now, let's dive a bit deeper in what Quarto is doing. Again, I think it's a very nice illustration by Alison Horst. And it basically visualizes the flow. So you start with a Quarto document. That's QMD. You see that the Markdown is in here, so it's the Quarto Markdown document. We will look at a couple of those documents later in the presentation. But typically, these documents contain some text, and they also contain code. So if you have R code in your Quarto document, what happens next is that knitr, that's the backend behind R Markdown, is fired up to create the results, to evaluate the code, and then create a Markdown document. So there is a step. So here you already have all the results in this Markdown document. But if you have Python code, Jupyter is used. If you have different codes in the same document, bear with me, we'll get back to that later. And then with this Markdown document is put into Pandoc, and Pandoc, it's a format converter. It's very general, and it can convert different things into different things, but most importantly, it can convert Markdown documents into all sorts of other things. I have broken this down even a bit more detailed. If you want to look it up, so because now here this visualizations includes everything that I've already said. We start with the Quarto document. If it has R code, knitr evaluates the code, the Markdown file contains only the results. If there's some other code, like Python or Julia, then Jupyter is used. And then Pandoc converts this to different output formats. And one thing that this slide before has not mentioned is also this arrow here, that one thing that Quarto also does is convert your configuration files and style files, as we also see later with examples. It converts them to so-called Lua filters, just some things that interact with Pandoc, or like configuration for Pandoc, or CSS if you have want to render HTML documents, or LaTeX. So I've recently written a book using Quarto, and the book had to be rendered in the great Kant CLS that the publisher demanded. So you have really a custom style that the book has to fulfill, and you can use it as a configuration input in the Quarto document. It evaluates the code, creates everything, and then at the end, Quarto makes sure that the LaTeX document takes this style file and renders the document correctly. And this is, I loved it because once we submitted the book to the publisher, I didn't ever want to use this style again, and we just changed it from LaTeX to HTML and rendered the website. So this is one of the very, very cool things. Any questions so far on this illustration? Yes.
Not on the illustration, but just because you mentioned publishing your book.
Yeah.
How did it work with citation?
Like in LaTeX, you create a bib file, and you will just link the bib file. And I mean, there's a different form of citations in Markdown documents than in LaTeX, but if you correctly cite in Markdown, then it will take care of the correct citation in LaTeX. So also assembling the bibliography, you can style it, you can do a lot of things. Any more questions? So the idea, as I think I've hinted at already a couple of times, is that you can move between different formats very easily. So for instance, so what you do with this Quarto document, at the top, you always define a YAML header. For instance, from I think the most simplest document, you just enter a title, you say, okay, I want to have a PDF format, and then you can either in the command line write Quarto render, and then you get an empty PDF. Well, no, not empty, it has a title. Or you can just hit in RStudio the render button, and then you get this PDF. But what if you want to create a presentation? I mean, I changed the title, it's my presentation now, but the only thing that you have to change is the format. You use Reveal.js. This is just what they use for presentations. It's JavaScript based, and this is also what I used here. If we want to create a dashboard, we will look at some examples later. It's a bit different, as you can see here, because then you have to use the project notation. But still, it's quite simple because it tells Quarto, okay, now it will be an HTML, and this has certain rows and columns, and you can put figures and data and stuff in it. But you're telling Quarto basically it's not just a long format HTML anymore, it has some more formatting restrictions. But going from dashboards to websites is quite simple, because you can just use type website for this project. And also some other examples, if you want to have a navigation bar on the left, you would say, okay, my website has a navigation bar. On the left, you have the link to the first page. And this is a Quarto document, where you just write your code and stuff. And moving from a website to a book is, again, you change the type of it. And here you can, exactly for the book project, you define the title. I used myself as the author, today's date, and then you would have the chapter 1. And actually, you can also, I mean, this you can render as an HTML, and then you can host it online as a website. But you could also add a format PDF and then specify the PDF text. So you have to get used to it, to this YAML notation, but I think the Quarto guys, they're doing a great job in making everything as concise and simple as possible. And they provide a lot of documentation. So this is really great. For any of those types of documents, you find extensive material by Quarto. Yes.
Can I just check, because I think this has changed since I last tried this. It looks like you've got now, and then you have different YAML configuration for each result type you'd like to render.
Okay, good point. I forgot to mention it. So as you see here at the top, this is just a self-contained Quarto document here. I use the QMDs, and here I silently switch to a YAML file. You're doing this because in a website or book, you typically have different Quarto files, but you would want to have the same configuration for all of those files. You can additionally change the configuration in each Quarto file. So you can override the general configuration. And you don't need any YAML files for the simple documents, so they can be self-contained.
So can you use it to override it though? So just by way of an example, I had a presentation for the user conference last year and had it as slides to deliver it. Yeah. And then in the weeks after, I didn't want it to be slides. I just wanted to generate a single document, which is like change the format or something like that. And I ended up doing that by branching my repo and then just publishing a different branch.
But you could just write here HTML and then it's a long.
But that changes it permanently. And what I'm wondering if there's a way to hold both configurations separately, and then to say, here's my the Markdown has all the content and the QMB has all the content. Then have two YAML documents so that I can, rather than like replacing it, be able to keep both versions running, depending on how I execute Quarto.
Interesting point. So on the spot, I don't know. I guess it's possible, but you have to do more command line stuff than just hitting a button. But yeah, why not?
So I didn't know you could have separate YAMLs, so that it looks like that should.
No, so for a project, if you write.
Or do you have to call it _Quarto YAML?
Yeah, you have to.
Okay, no, you can't do it then.
I don't know. We can check later. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe you can manually, when you call Quarto, manually tell it to you. And if you can't do it, then just open an issue at GitHub. They should. I mean, why not? It's just automatically doing this. To close the introduction to Quarto. I also wondered where does this come from, and actually, so I just linked the Wikipedia article here. I think it's funny that Johannes Gutenberg actually is believed to have printed the first Quarto. It's just that it's how they folded paper back then. I don't know. I have to ask somebody from the Quarto team how they discovered this. I think it's just very, very strange that it's not something that you come across. Okay. Now we'll talk about showcases. How am I doing on time? How much do you?
17 minutes.
17 over. Okay. But I hope that now everybody has some understanding what Quarto can do, and there's different engines that can render different documents. So let's start again with really a Quarto document. This is how it would look like in the RStudio console if we use this type of syntax highlighted. And so again, creating a dummy document, entering the author format. This is how in Markdown you would denote a headline. Actually, by entering more hashtags, you create the subheadlines. So this is already H2 in HTML terms. And this is how you would create some code you have to put it into this notation. I'm not sure how to call it, but here you're telling the Quarto actually, okay, there's our code, you have to evaluate it, so Quarto will pass it to knitr as we did before. But importantly, you can add different options to these code chunks. Here, for instance, I'm telling you, okay, you should evaluate this code chunk, but don't print the result. I don't want to include this in my document. Sometimes you want to do it because you're just aggregating data and or something like that, or running tests or something. You want it to fail, but not show what's actually happening. You can even hide code chunks. You can cache the results. There are many different options. But if you render this in HTML, now this is a screenshot. I did not render a Quarto document in the presentation. I did not try that actually. But this is how this would turn out. You have this big headline, the author headline, the H2 here. This is an example for a code chunk that is evaluated. So you see this little R console notation here. It's just, okay, it's 2. And here you have the code chunk that is not, we don't see any output, but it is evaluated. And if I change the YAML from HTML to BF and hit the render button, this is what I get. It's comma class, I think, is the default. Very common LaTeX class for document. And it's just the same output in different format. And of course, as I mentioned before, you can have different styling and for HTML document or for a PDF document, and I think that's nice. Also for Word documents, but to be honest, I don't really work with Office products that much. The second showcase, creating a presentation. So this is actually the header from this presentation. So just the first few lines. I mean, here I even have a subtitle. I'm telling the code output later, and when I render it, I don't want to every time create the figures. It's just, I'm not changing the code anymore, the data doesn't change. I don't care. And then I'm saying, okay, I'll use a reveal.js presentation, and then you can configure the reveal.js. So for instance, defining the transition, I want slide numbering, I even have a SCSS file to change the colors a bit. We have a question from the live stream.
From the stream from Barry. He's asking if you can still include chunk options inside the curly brackets. So probably that was before, I'm not sure.
Yes, I think, so what Barry refers to, I think in our Markdown you would use comma, eval, true, and then comma, output false. You can do the same. At least for our code, I'm pretty sure for other code as well. You can, so if you, I think if you transition from R Markdown to Quarto, you only have to touch the header for most documents. So just the YAML.
I think it gets a bit messy if you combine them though.
I've never tried that actually. It wouldn't make much sense.
Yeah, it works, but you should really do it only in transition. So I had a lot of old Markdown documents, and when I switched to Quarto, I didn't touch all the headers, but when I work with them more extensively, I actually do that. But you can mix them. You can have some option. I'm not quite sure which one would win if you give conflicting.
Exactly.
I didn't try that one.
Yeah, I mean, I just refactored it. But I don't recall that the refactoring was that painful actually. So it depends. If you have 100 files, yeah, then I would think about the script that does the refactoring. Yep. Okay. So coming back to the presentation, just as an example, how you could then configure the reveal.js. Obviously, if you have a format HTML, then you don't have this slide number parameters anymore. But I think, I'm not 100% sure, but I think Quarto will ignore things that it doesn't know and throw you a warning, at least. Oh no, it would even give you an error. Yeah. because they introduced new parameters with a new version, and then all of a sudden I had errors. Now, finally, an example where you see the R code and the block. So this is actually an example that I also have in one of my blog posts. I assume that most of you are familiar with the ggplot2 package and also the Palma Penguins package that's just used extensively for all kinds of educational content. First, it's open source. Second, penguins are cute, so why not use it? I'm not going into details in the ggplot stuff. Cedric Scherer did this last time. But what I did, I just have the code chunk, and when you evaluate it, you just get the figure below on a presentation or a document. But you could, of course, specify that the code is hidden or that the code can be folded. You can even allow the user to copy the code easily. So there are different options you can do here. So this is how it would look like if you do it in exactly the same thing in Python. Here, as an illustration, I use the plot9 package. That's the translation of ggplot2. It's very, very close. So all the functions have the same names. Even the Palma Penguins package exists in Python. It exists in Julia as well. And you can create very similar plot. And in this presentation, this is not a screenshot, this is actually evaluated. So I really like this. But you can go even further and say, okay, and this is something I've been playing around with a lot recently, is to have different languages in the same document. So it's like, for those people who like R, but if you like Python, so this is how the code would look like. For Julia, it's harder, but it's also possible to create a very similar figure. And I think so the important thing here is that these code chunks, they are all evaluated, and I think this is also, from an educational perspective, it's really great, because I think it opens up a new avenue for different types of educational content. And that's something I've been working on recently. I can compare packages across different languages. And I think this is really cool because there are a lot of experienced data scientists out there, and I think the future goes in the direction that you have to at least understand multiple languages, not that you have to be fluent in Python, R, and Julia at the same time. But if you're collaborating with others, it's very useful that you understand their code. So, do you have anybody with Python experience here? Pandas? Yeah. I cannot publicly say my honest opinion about pandas. But, for instance, you can do these kind of things. Like, okay, for those who are familiar with the dplyr pipeline, is like, the penguins, this is how you filter species, and the island, this is how you get the output. And this is how it would look like in pandas, or one way of doing it in pandas. If you do it differently, more Pythonic, then you will not like this, but I think this is the tidy approach to do it. This is something I'm playing around with at the moment a lot. So if you are curious about this switching between languages, check out my blog. Mostly I'm doing it actually for myself because I want to learn this, and I figured, okay, it seems like other people also like this, at least on LinkedIn. In any case, if you think about this visualization that we had before about the whole process, you think, wait a minute, Christoph, how is this even possible? Because I thought if there's R code, it goes to Knitr, if there's Python code, it goes to Jupyter. How can you have multiple programming languages at the same time? And initially, I did not realize this because nobody told me. But if you have R Python and Julia code as an example that I have before, what happens in the background is actually knitr doing all the work. Because knitr has, I mean, of course, it can evaluate the R code. It fires up an R session, evaluates the code, and then it's collected again. And knitr uses reticulate. So if you've ever worked with R, Python in the same session, moving data frames back and forth, this is possible. And the reticulate package actually does the work here. So what happens is this knitr, in parallel to the R session, it starts a Python process and evaluates the Python code. And for Julia, it uses the Julia call package to fire up the Julia process and evaluate the code. So this is actually, you can evaluate different types of code at the same time. And then knitr collects the results again. If you are very, very brave, then you can even think about moving data and results between different processes and sessions, but I did not go into this that much actually. But I was really confused at the beginning because I thought, okay, why is Jupyter not working? You know, how is this possible? But I mean, maybe the takeaway from this slide is, thank God that knitr is so powerful. So many great people have worked on this for a long time, and it's not like Quarto shows up, R Markdown, and knitr is gone. Nobody cares. No, it's just this is still doing a lot of work. Yeah, if you want to create a website, I can just recommend you actually to. So if you're an RStudio user, and I hope that most of you are, if you're working with R, just create a new project and use the default Quarto website, and there you have something. You just can publish it, render, and you have a static website that it's just very, very simple, and you can. I just link everything here. So if you're interested in creating a website, please check it out yourself. Quarto has great guides to create a website. They even show you how to publish it via GitHub pages, so you don't have to pay anything. Everything is managed through version control. So I did this already a couple of times. In the past, it was painful if you ever created a Markdown-based website, and if you know what Hugo is, and hate it as much as I do. But now it's super simple. And yeah, just to show an example again, this is my old static website. It's nothing exciting. It's just an image I wrote. Yeah, some links with publications and just to have an online presence, I guess. Anyway, how can I go back? So. For books, I can give you the same recommendation. Again, RStudio provides a great default to how to create a Quarto book. One thing that I did, so I think a great example for a Quarto book is also the new version for data science. So Hadley, I think they released it last year, and rewrote it quite substantially. I think it's a great book for anybody who wants to get more into visualization and simple data analysis. And as you can see here, this is just an HTML. It's a website, and on the left you have the chapters. So actually, all the data is in the Quarto YAML. They linked all these different documents. They created some section headers some what's it called? Somehow you can group chapters. I don't know the word at the moment. And also the cool thing is that you can just if you want to check out how they did it, Hadley has it on GitHub. So you see the different Quarto documents. And you can see here, for instance, O'Reilly colors. So there's something happening here that the publisher wanted probably. And it's also a great resource. You could just clone it and try to build it in your on your machine. If you ever work with a publisher together, run into issues with style files and stuff like that, feel free to reach out. So I've had many painful hours. And yes, so one of the last examples, this is just part of the newest release of Quarto. I think the 1.45 or something, they released it last week or 2 weeks ago. And you can now create dashboards with Quarto. And I think this is great because if you have visualization experience, you can create things like that very similar to the documents that you've shown before. So you don't even have to know anything about Shiny if you've worked with that. You can create a very simple, I mean, here I think they use the leaflet package because it also has this, I think you can also move it around or something. So whatever you're creating in your plot view pane, you can just include in a dashboard. But of course, as with the HTML documents or any PDF documents, this is a static website. But you have the option to create a Shiny backend. So this is also very cool that you can move from static data. If you're just prototyping, you just want to, this is how it can look like with some sample data. You create this dashboard, you show it to your supervisor or something, or your colleague, and he's like, oh, that's exactly what I want, but I want to have it updated like every hour. And like, okay, then let's take this, but I connect it to a different data backend, and then you can always refresh it. So I've worked with Shiny a lot. So in my company, we've built Shiny dashboards for 4 years now. It's great, but it's also pain, in particular when they get too big, and then you spend a lot of time with flowing the rows, and everything should move fine. And I would love to switch to the dashboards at some point, but it's a lot of work if you have already a lot of tech debt. But I think this is just this dashboard release made Quarto even greater. Because this is also, you can create much more appealing, interactive stuff. And again, so I'm just linking official Quarto documents here because it's very well documented. For the dashboards, they even have a lot of gallery dashboards and so examples that you can look at and play around with. And again, don't forget that you can. It doesn't matter whether you're using R code or Python code or Julia to create these dashboards. This is also great. Actually, but I've never tried to connect a Python-based Quarto dashboard to an R-based Shiny backend. Maybe that's also possible. I just want to mention it. I think it's a bit of advanced stuff, at least for me as an R programmer. So if you're coming from JavaScript, maybe this is easier for you. And there is not much documentation on this. So actually none. It's just Googling and reading, looking into GitHub issues and stuff like that. But I created a website and I wanted to have this, I like this particles JS background, and I was like, how can I include this in the Quarto in the document? You see it reacts to the cursor. But the cool thing is that you can even, if you're very ambitious, nothing can stop you in Quarto. So for this particular examples, you need some HTML information in the header, something at the bottom of the page. You have to provide a styles CSS file, particular where I actually define this div. So I don't know how much you are into website development, but this is actually, so this is the code chunk that just calls this one. So, and I think that's also very nice. So you could just also use HTML code, but the Quarto team is working hard on making it simpler to use different types of customized things that you're building in a Quarto document. So if you ever, if you also want to have something like that on your website or in your dashboard, and so you can just check out my GitHub repository and or write me an email. So. Maybe as another example. No, I'm not too proud of this page at the moment because it looks like a 90s website. But here at the bottom, this, for instance, is also a JavaScript-based integration. So sorry, web developers, this looks ugly, I know. But, just to show another example of what you can include. All right. And I think with this, I'm actually closing already. Because my idea for this presentation was for those of you who have never seen Quarto, I hope that you now have a better understanding of what this can do, what you can do with it. And for those of you who already have some experience with Quarto, I hope that I still was able to show you some new things. If you like Quarto, I'm repeating myself, the official Quarto documentation. So there are other areas in data science where you don't get great documentation, so this is why I'm really happy about this one. And there also, I can recommend the Hello Quarto slides and talk by Julia and Mina. So I also provide the link here. If you want to check out the code behind my slides, so this is the QR code that should get you to my GitHub repository. If you clone it and try to render it, I'm very certain that you will not be able to do it because there's Julia code in it, and Julia is a bit. So I provide some instructions, but it's a bit of a mess. But if you just remove the Julia code, everything should work fine. Yes, and if you ever have any kind of questions related to Quarto or want some new directions, feel free to reach out to me. Those days I'm more and more on LinkedIn because it seems like data science people are moving there. In any case, thanks a lot for your attention.